Yeah, the UFC has a lot of things to work on. The bad thing is the UFC right now is because they're the most popular. It's whatever they do, other promotions are kind of likely to follow, if not try to integrate. So it's kind of like they're the Apple and all the other promotions are Android, trying to figure out different ways to get ahead of the bunch or the pack. So that's the crazy thing is if the UFC doesn't change anything. I mean, you even look at the pay of Canelo and Cerrone this weekend. Cerrone makes 400,000, but Canelo makes 35 million for pretty much the same amount of time fighting. What's the difference? They're both putting their lives on the line. Then why is one person making so much more? And UFC right now is easily, MMA in general is the most popular sport in the world. They definitely had more views that night than the Zone's pay-per-view event. Then why wasn't Cerrone paid more? Well, it's a system, and sadly, the system in MMA is still not as developed as boxing, and that's something we definitely need to work on as well.
I mean, that was like the big thing with McGregor versus Mayweather because that's still his problem now, in my opinion, is the hungriness. He's not hungry anymore, but um, that was the thing. McGregor went from being a $4 million fighter to a $130 million fighter. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's a big difference. And to think that this is a game where people bounce elbows off of eyebrows and knees off of stomachs. You can get hit in the temple with a heel, and you're not getting paid a fourth of what these guys are getting paid in boxing. I'm not playing down boxing because boxing's a very rigorous, very hard sport, and it's an amazing sport, and I love it to death. But it's just it's gladiator fighting over here, and you're not getting paid one fourth of what they're getting paid. It's ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 with that statement because MMA is a gladiator sport. It's almost like, again, you can practically do anything to beat your opponent. The only difference is I do know, even for a fact, that boxing is more dangerous just because most of the shots are going to the head. Most of the shots are going to your organs compared to MMA. It's like, oh man, I'm getting beat up. All right, cool. I'm taking you down.
I
And I'm going to
completely
try to tap
agree.
you out. So it is a little different, but it's still the fact of MMA. We're hitting you almost like bare knuckle boxing. That's a lot more damage if we do get hit. One punch can knock you out compared to boxing. It might take a few from a certain opponent unless you're Triple G. But it's the fact of whatever the case may be, we are in a combative sport where we are putting our lives in line. You take one shot in the back of the head, that's it, can end it. People do wake up brain dead because of that. So it's something to where I understand why boxing gets paid so much, given the promotion system is much different. 60% of the promotion proceeds go to the fighters, and 40% goes to the promotion itself. Compared to UFC, 90% goes to the UFC. 10, if not less, go to the fighters, and that's already saying a lot. That's
Yeah,
why
that's
the
crazy.
UFC sold for what 4.6 billion.
Yeah.
That makes nothing but sense because they take all the money for it. I mean, you look at all the sponsors they get, those sponsors do nothing for the fighters. Those sponsors do everything for the UFC. So why do we have sponsors for the UFC? That again makes no sense.
That was
Reebok, yeah,
I
cool.
think that
That
was
we
probably
make a
one of my
little bit of
least
money.
favorite parts about that Reebok switch. Like I mean, again, I'm all cool with them wanting to be like a more formative sport and having certain dress codes and stuff like that. See, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. This is where I would have said. I would have said, give the Reebok uniforms, right? But let the fighters put sponsors on top of it. You know what I mean? Like, give the Reebok uniforms, let the fighters put sponsors on it. That's where you could have met in the middle. But instead, they kind of cut off the sponsors completely, except for maybe Monster Energy, which they have on very few fighters like McGregor and Jones. But
Which is a side sponsorship for them.
yeah. So that's the only reason why they have it on there because they already have a sponsorship with them. And it's just rough for me because again, the fighters get paid 10% of what the UFC makes for every pay per view. And most of the fighters, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe most of the fighters before that made most of their money off of sponsorships.
Yeah, Brendan Schaub made 120 in one event, and then he ended up having the Reebok deal, and I believe he only made 20, if
That's
not less.
crazy. That's ridiculous to me. You know what I mean? It's because these fighters, they definitely earn their sponsorships. The sponsors are looking into them because they like the way that they fight, or like the way they carry themselves, or whatever. They earn these sponsorships. The UFC just kind of took it away. And again, it sounds like I'm bashing on the UFC, but I love the company, and this is why I'm criticizing it like this because I wanted to get better. You know, I personally believe that the company is probably one of the best companies in the world. It has some changes and stuff like that, but like it's definitely up there. You know what I mean? And I think they just need to get their shit together when it comes to that kind of stuff, because they pay a lot more attention right now to money making as a business rather than the fighters. And it's the same thing with a regular company. You know, if you don't pay attention to the employees, soon enough you won't have a company anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, sadly, that's why you see all these fighters complaining on Twitter and complaining publicly and going, "If not, I'll freaking leave." And most fighters have left, and that's the thing. I mean, Dustin Poirier didn't get a title shot until he had to complain and make it public. It's one of those things that is that what we're having to, in a sense, belittle ourselves down to. Like, I'm happy for Dustin Poirier, but if you're going to treat a fighter that bad after winning so many fights, that's completely unfair. Now they're just tossing around interim belts because most people are going to watch pay-per-view events if it's a belt on the line, because again, not many MMA fans are as educated as some. So it's the fact of that's why other promotions are thriving. ONE FC, Brave, KSW, Ryzen. They're just doing so much now that's being a little different, making more of a fair fight, making more fights that the fans want instead of, oh, cool, we're going to have some celebrity death matches here. And that's pretty much kind of what the UFC slowly turned into. Why is Brock Lesnar going to get a title fight immediately? Because his last fight he won, but it's technically a no contest because he was on PEDs. But we're going to give him a title fight anyways. Why? That makes no sense. Oh, he's popular. Oh, okay, that's why we're doing it. So it's one of those things. Stipe, literally the best heavyweight champion of all time, doesn't get an immediate rematch, and he has to wait years. And Brock Lesnar not fighting. All right, come on, Stipe, we'll give you a shot.
That was probably I was super upset about that because Stipe is one of my all-time favorites when it comes to heavyweight, and I think he's a lot of people's favorites, especially since he broke the record. But he's such a humble and good guy, and again, I never met him, but I mean everything he's shown, he seems like a good guy. There's been no controversy. He's never tested positive. He's always been clean. He's always fought well.